Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about my Week 8 running back starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about a little bit of news around the National Football League. There's been a lot of trades that have taken place, and a lot of them will be affecting the fantasy football landscape going forward. We're going to be talking about that. Then we're also going to be talking about a couple injuries here and there that we have updates on. Then going over the running back matchups going into Week 8, who has the best matchups going forward. Also, who's going to be in a little bit more difficult situations. Also talking about the bye week teams going forward. And then also going over my top 36 running back rankings on the week to kind of give you guys a perspective on my opinions on how I think everything is going to shake down. Now, before we get into that, again, let me remind all of you, if you haven't yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community, get that cursor past Stephon Gilmore, cornerback of the New England Patriots. If you guys watched that Monday night game yesterday, we all know that the Patriots defense is just swarming on quarterbacks, getting interceptions left, right, and center. It might be difficult to get past a guy like Stephon Gilmore, but if you definitely can, get that cursor to the subscribe button, click the subscribe button, click the bell notification button, and don't forget to click the like button on today's video. Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, so we're talking about the running back position. Now, before we get into that, like I mentioned, we want to talk about some news around the National Football League. A lot of trades have been coming down the pike. Obviously, the trade deadline is approaching. Therefore, a lot of teams, a lot of contenders, a lot of teams that are tanking are looking to get rid of their prospects and their valuable assets. And then a lot of teams that are almost there on the brink of getting to a championship are trying to gain assets in order to get them past the hump and get them to where they want to be. Now, for a couple of the more important acquisitions as of right now in terms of fantasy football, the two main being Mohamed Sanu, wide receiver of the Atlanta Falcons for the last couple of years. A pretty good contributor in that offense, has been traded to the New England Patriots. Insanely enough, yes, that is the case. He was traded for a second-round pick. I think not only does that increase his value, but it does a lot for Calvin Ridley going forward because that Atlanta offense, sure, they don't win games there, but they are a good offense. And yes, they didn't have a great showing this past week, but I do believe going forward, this is going to help bring opportunities to Julio, to Calvin Ridley, to Austin Hooper, three guys that already get a great amount of opportunities, but adding on top of that only helps them going forward. Mohamed Sanu himself will be in a Josh Gordon-esque role, hopefully with the health of Josh Gordon. Unfortunately, in the not the right place as of right now. Mohamed Sanu is going to come in and be a contributor right away. So that's definitely going to help that organization, certainly. Now, another trade acquisition that we heard rumbles about weeks in advance. I mean, in fact, we heard the exact trade talked about. I think I mentioned it even a couple weeks ago because the rumors were filtering and fluttering around the conversation that Emmanuel Sanders could be traded to the 49ers because they need a number one wide receiver and because the Denver Broncos, they don't seem to be doing very well, obviously, and they need to go ahead and acquire picks to look forward and try to build a team for the future. That's exactly what they did. The 49ers, who are undefeated still, gathered another piece that they need. As of right now, their wide receiver core, just nowhere to be found. Dante Pettis isn't getting anything done. All their younger, wide receivers. Sure, Dante Pettis is only in his second year. He will grow, but Deebo Samuel, Kendrick Bourne, these are guys that in a couple of years can potentially be top wide receivers, but they really need their number one. And they went and got Emmanuel Sanders, which is really great. Not only does this increase the value of Courtland Sutton going forward, but it also does increase the value of Emmanuel Sanders. So that's absolutely fantastic. Other than that, in terms of trades, there's defensive players that are moving around. There are probably going to be other trades that are made in the next coming days. I want to see if the Titans trade Marcus Mariota. I'm just waiting for it. I want to see if perhaps maybe they trade him to the Chargers. I remember a couple years back in that year that they were going to that draft when Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota were going back and forth as the first round picks. There was a lot of rumbling about the San Diego Chargers at the time drafting Marcus Mariota to be the replacement for Phillip Rivers. Perhaps the time has come, maybe, but Marcus Mariota's damaged goods at this point, so we'll see. Also, I've been saying it for a couple weeks now. O.J. Howard to the Seahawks, guys. Just keep your eyes out. There's a possibility. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they do not use the tight end position as much as they have in years past, and as of right now, as it sits, O.J. Howard is really not contributing, so we could see some movement there. Also, the Seahawks could go ahead and maybe get a guy like Kyle Rudolph, considering Irv Smith has played well for the Vikings in the last couple of weeks. Perhaps I heard something that Jack Doyle could be traded to the Seahawks because, Will Disley's absence. But only time will tell, but those are a couple of the rumors that I wanted to throw out. The last piece of information that I wanted to talk about as of right now was injury news on Kerryon Johnson, running back for the Detroit Lions. Unfortunately, he left the game this past Sunday with a knee injury, and according to what we heard, as of right now, he has already undergone surgery, and he's been placed on the IR with the hope of coming back. Now, this seems a lot like what he had to deal with last year, right? He went to the IR. And unfortunately, because of the schedule and the record of the Lions, they didn't feel a need to bring him back off of IR because they weren't a playoff contender. That might end up being the case this year. Hopefully, we're going to see a return of Kerryon Johnson, but as of right now, that's not the case. Are they going to go sign somebody else? There's a potential that they can do that, but as of right now, who is the immediate next man up? It's Ty Johnson, who we saw a lot of work from this past week, and J.D. McKissic as the third down back. Ty Johnson does get work in the passing game, and a guy that I mentioned yesterday in the waiver wire pickups. I think he becomes the automatic initial number one right after the last couple running backs as a guy that you want to pick up because sure, David Johnson's still alive. Alvin Kamara still, could play in the next coming weeks, but Kerryon Johnson's on the IR, so we might as well go after that running back for the Lions because he's an immediate starting running back, and that has a lot of value in fantasy football. So that is what I wanted to talk to you guys about. Now that we've done all of that, we can go into our Week 8 running back rankings. But before we do that again, let's talk about some matchups, shall we? All right, everyone. So we can finally rejoice because not only are the Miami Dolphins not the worst team against the run any longer, it is the Cincinnati Bengals. It only took Frank Gore and Devin Singletary to have two of the worst weeks against some of the worst defenses in the National Football League. The Miami Dolphins are terrible. Yet, by a slim margin, we finally have the Cincinnati Bengals giving up the most points to opposing running backs on a weekly basis in half-point PPR scoring formats. Absolutely incredible. So to kind of give you guys some perspective on who has the easiest matchups going into Week 8, excuse me, here we go. So the Cincinnati Bengals certainly, that's always going to be easy, and Todd Gurley gets his, pick of the litter here. Also, Darrell Henderson, who saw, a pretty good amount of snaps last week once it got into garbage time, could be a viable option potentially this week if he's going to play majority of the second half. But Gurley should be fine. The Miami Dolphins, who do they get to play? James Conner and Benny Snell Jr. That is a good two-headed monster there. Good combination coming off a bye week. Should be able to match and beat the crap out of the Miami Dolphins defense. Then we get the Detroit Lions. The Lions get to play against Saquon Barkley. I see Saquon having a pretty good week here. He had a pretty good start, but we'll talk about it in a little bit. At least he's back and he's healthy. That's all we pretty much want to see as Saquon Barkley owners or fantasy football fans. Moving on, the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers get to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know what kind of offense they're going to be coming out there with Matt Moore, but only time will tell. Again, Ty Johnson gets to play against the New York Giants, who are giving up a lot of points. We saw Chase Edmonds have a 3-touchdown week on 27 carries last week. Why not Ty Johnson? There's always a potential. The Jets, the Browns, the Bears, the Chiefs, and the Washington Redskins also giving up a lot of points to opposing running backs. The team that I did not anticipate being in this group was the Chicago Bears. As a team that has been so good in prior seasons against the run, they have been nothing but I cannot even understand where that defense went. They were an elite defense for a consistent 2 years. And then, I don't know what happened. Prior to their bye week, they went to London. They got smacked by Josh Jacobs. They hit the bye week. Maybe they're going to hit the refresh button, come back and play well against the Saints. Nope. Latavius Murray, 27 carries, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, puts a monster game on them. Going forward, it's going to be tough. This week, I don't think it's that bad because the Chargers, their offensive line is beat up and they cannot run the ball. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more when we talk about Eckler and Gordon, but I don't think it's going to be bad. But I'm just so surprised that the Bears are down here. It's insane. Anyway, the tougher matchups, according to this statistic in terms of the running back position. the Seattle Seahawks, the Arizona Cardinals, the Baltimore Ravens, the Colts, Eagles, Vikings, Saints, Buccaneers, 49ers, and Patriots. Really, when we look at like the Vikings, Saints, Buccaneers, 49ers, and Patriots, those aren't a joke. Those are good run-stopping defenses. They have great front sevens, and they're really getting after it every single week, despite any of the matchups. Sure, the Eagles have been better, but we saw what Zeke was able to do to them. You feed the ball to Zeke, you take an early lead, and you just keep pounding with that great offensive line that was fully healthy. You keep going. Anyway, these were the matchups for Week 8 of the fantasy football season. This is how much defenses are giving up to opposing running backs on a weekly basis, just to kind of give you some perspective. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about my top 12 rankings on the week, my RB1s. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and readjust this really quickly. Okay, so number 1, Dalvin Cook playing on Thursday night. Yes, it's a short week, not a problem whatsoever. I still believe Dalvin Cook, has been incredible in fantasy football thus far. Unfortunately, he's going to have a bye week soon, and we're not going to have him in our lineups, but so be it. Dalvin Cook this week playing against the Washington Redskins defense has been awful all around. The team itself, the Washington Redskins, have not been able to really do anything great this season, except for that Miami Dolphins win, which, even then was barely. So as of right now, Dalvin Cook, this offense is clicking. Kirk Cousins has been incredible. The offensive line and their blocking in terms of, especially the tight end position. Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith, great blocking tight ends. Their fullback Ham really is going ham. And they've been pretty good. Even Alexander Madison comes in, change of pace, gives Dalvin Cook a rest here or there. Cook's amazing. He's my number 1. Moving on to number 2, Saquon Barkley playing against the Lions. Again, like I was mentioning, Saquon Barkley had a pretty good outing for week 1. Sure, I'd like to see more usage in the passing game, especially in a PPR format, and I'd love to see Daniel Jones get the ball out of his hands quicker and not have to get sacked and feel the pressure in the pocket. That's a lot of learning that will eventually come to him. I think Eli Manning needs to pull him aside and be like, listen, Saquon needs the ball in his hands. Let's feed him, because if you're not passing to Golden Tate and you're not passing to Evan Ingram, give the ball to Saquon. He's the best player on the field. Hopefully we'll see more of that soon. I think this is an extremely favorable matchup, and now that he's fully healthy and ready to go, Saquon's always one of the top backs. He's my number 2 on the week. Moving on to number 3, Christian McCaffrey. So, yes, he's playing the 49ers. That's not a great matchup. I don't want to say that it is, but I'm not really worried about Christian McCaffrey. When we were doing yesterday, I did a Patreon-only live stream like I typically do on Mondays and Fridays. Check out the Patreon link down in the description if you guys are interested. Somebody was asking me if I was worried about Christian McCaffrey. And truth be told, I'm really not. Christian McCaffrey has just been too good and far too consistent for me to have to worry about him at this point. He's an RB1 that I'm going to play in any matchup no matter what, and I'm not going to be concerned about it, because whatever he produces, I'm willing to live and die by Christian McCaffrey, and that's why he's at my number 3 spot. I do not mind playing him against a tough defense with a great defensive line and a defense that, this team is on fire, and they're only getting better as the weeks progress, and I still do believe yes, Kyle Allen, when Cam Newton comes back, it will help out Christian McCaffrey more, but still, I think in this matchup, I'm perfectly fine starting him. He's my number 3, certainly. Moving on to number 4, Leonard Fournette. So Leonard Fournette was a big contributor in helping the Cincinnati Bengals be the worst defense against the running back this last week. Over 100 yards rushing, a bunch of carries. Absolutely fantastic. That's exactly what we want to see. Unfortunately, didn't find the end zone, but that's okay. He had a 4th down carry early in the first quarter. Tried to jump over the pile, got stuffed. Not a big deal. They failed to convert on 4th down, but it's okay. Eventually, those weeks, he'll get that touchdown, and he'll have even bigger games, which is absolutely fantastic. Going forward, the Jacksonville Jaguars offense, I think, it's at a spot right now that Leonard Fournette not only is one of the most, he is the entire offense itself, but it's getting to a point where I think, goodness, what am I looking for? Sorry, guys. I'm looking for, there we go. It's getting to a point where at least we can count on the idea that Minshew's going to be able to move the ball and get them downfield so that we can get opportunities for Leonard Fournette. If, in fact, we were looking at a 2018 Jaguars offense where Blake Bortles couldn't move the offense, they weren't able to protect the quarterback, they weren't able to complete first downs, they would often see 3 and outs. At least we're seeing something different. At least we're seeing some production out of this offense to give us more confidence in Leonard Fournette, and that's entirely the biggest difference maker thus far. And Leonard Fournette continues to produce, sees a ample amount of touches, has stayed healthy, plays against the Jets this week. We saw what Sony Michel was able to do against them. 3 touchdowns. A lot of that had to do with the fact that he was just given the opportunity of it. But again, this is a great matchup, and I think Leonard Fournette has looked great thus far, and he's going to continue to do so. He's my number 4. Moving on to number 5. All right, so I have Alvin Kamara here, and I have Latavius Murray. So here's my thought process. I believe if Kamara wants to play this week, if he's healthy against the Cardinals at home, it's absolutely fantastic. But they could limit him potentially. So I do believe if he plays, I want him on my roster. I want him as a top 5 running back. Is Alvin Kamara? How am I not going to play him? So that's my logic there. I'm not going to just ignore Alvin Kamara and leave him on my bench. I'm not going to, worry that, I'm going to get David Johnson and I'm going to end up playing a guy that doesn't play at all. If in fact he practices all week long and he is playing, and he's active, I want him in my lineup. Now, what do we do with Latavius Murray? If in fact Kamara does not practice this week and Latavius Murray is ready to go, I don't mind Latavius Murray in this matchup against the Cardinals. The dude got 27 carries, and they're not afraid to run the ball consistently with him behind this offensive line, behind these tight ends that can block the fullback. Everything is built for a run-heavy team. That's why they have that 2-headed monster set, so they can always pound the ball and dictate games with their defense and then run the clock, chew clock, keep opposing offenses off the field and win games. So I still don't have a problem with Latavius Murray being a top 12 back this week, considering what he was able to do last week going against the Cardinals. So just kind of put that out there. Obviously, if they're both active, Latavius Murray has lesser value, but he's going to still be a top 36 back because I do believe he's going to get touches because Kamara is not going to get initially all the workload back coming off of an ankle injury. All right, moving on to number 6, James Conner gets to play against the Dolphins. That's all I really need to say. Analysis-wise, James Conner has looked pretty good in the last couple weeks. Sure, the absence of Ben Roethlisberger makes a giant difference, but the matchup is far too favorable to ignore James Conner. In the last couple weeks, he's been really good. Obviously, against lesser defenses, especially against the run. Cincinnati Bengals was easy. The Chargers was an easy matchup, and so will the Miami Dolphins. And coming off of a bye week, we know he's been a little bit injured thus far this season, but hopefully that has rejuvenated him to have him, pretty much put together a good performance there. Moving on to number 7, really quickly. Excuse me. All right, so moving on to number 7, Chris Carson, the thumbnail. By the way, the thumbnail, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's October, so be aware. Donate if you guys can to the charities and stuff like that. If anybody's been affected by that, that's unfortunate. But hey, stay strong. That stuff it's always tough. But I just wanted to fight on with the breast cancer awareness. All right, anyway, so let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about Chris Carson, my number 7. Playing against the Falcons. The Falcons defense can't stop a soul. We know that certainly. Even, Todd Gurley was able to run a wheel route and score with his busted leg, his busted thigh, and still looked pretty athletic doing so, right? So as of right now, going forward, what do I see? I see Chris Carson. He's going to be great. I mean, he's a good running back, plain and simple. Obviously, this past week against the Ravens, wasn't able to really get anything going. The offense for the entire Seahawks wasn't able to get anything going, which is unfortunate, but going forward should be fine. I think we'll get back into seeing a 20-plus carry kind of game for Chris Carson, in which he's dictating the game over 100 yards, a touchdown. That's probably what we're going to see this week because Rashad Penny does not exist in this offense. Sure, we'll see CJ Prosise here and there, but it is the Chris Carson show, and he is my number 7 for that reason. Moving on to number 8, Todd Gurley. Speaking of Todd Gurley, Todd Gurley has a really easy matchup against the Bengals. I mean, how easy is that? At home against one of the worst teams in the National Football League. They have yet to pick up a W. It's not looking good for the Bengals. But at least Todd Gurley owners, you can have a pretty good week before the couple slates of games that the Rams are going to see. If I'm not mistaken, the Rams, after this week, doesn't look great for them in terms of, let me find it really quickly. All right, here comes the Rams schedule. So you get to play against the Bengals, which is easy. Then you have to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have been playing defense, at an alarmingly better rate than they have earlier in the season. Then you have to take on the Bears. Could be easy, but the Bears, again, not a tough. It's a tough matchup. Okay, they can get after the Rams for sure. Then you have the Ravens. So those are 3 games right there who are against better defenses. We'll see how that turns out, but only time will tell. But either way, this week, great matchup. Everything looks to be, in my opinion, in favor of Todd Gurley. So as of right now, I'm playing him as my number 8 running back. Moving on to number 9, Derrick Henry. Finally, thank goodness. I mean, I expected him to have a great week last week against the Chargers. Chargers can't stop a soul. Therefore, he did, which is absolutely fantastic. Ryan Tannehill led that offense. It allowed Derrick Henry to not have to be forced to run the ball 25 times a game, and he is the only option to whether or not they succeed. They took a little bit of pressure off Derrick Henry, which helped open up this offense and helped lead to success. And I think going forward with Tannehill as the quarterback, we should probably see a little bit better performances from Derrick Henry going forward, because it doesn't all have to be on him. They get to play against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are good against stopping the run. But hopefully, Derrick Henry, we've seen him do some crazy things against good defenses. I have a lot of confidence in him. There's no way I'm leaving him on my bench. He's my number 9 on the week. Moving on to number 10, Josh Jacobs, a guy that is just insane, just insane. I'm gonna always have flashbacks to that week, but you guys know what I'm referring to. I'm gonna always have flashbacks to that week where he was playing the Bears defense, and I thought, there's no way he can murk them. No, you know what? He's just unbelievable. I mean, before the season started, I had him as my best rookie running back coming into the year, as everyone did. Why? Because Alabama running back didn't take too many touches in college, had a fresh body, ready to come in. Isaiah Crowell went out with an Achilles tear injury. The backfield was all to be his. Jalen Richard was going to see less work. A lot of receptions would be up for grabs. And goodness, he's ran away with it, and he continues to do so. The Raiders this coming week take on the Houston Texans. They're going to run the ball down their throat, and he's going to have a good week. He's my number 10. Moving on to number 11, Le'Veon Bell. Even though we all suffered watching that game last night until the halftime, commercial, and then we didn't really see much, and then we went and moved on, and we watched the second half of a atrocious, performance by the Jets offense. I think going forward, Le'Veon Bell should see more touches. If you are turning over the ball so much, you are not allowing the running game to develop. What does that mean? If in fact you come out and you're down 24-0, you can't come out and run the ball because you're going to kill clock and you're not going to be able to get down the field and score quickly enough. Therefore, the running game was completely evaporated at that point. Therefore, going into this week, hopefully, because of it's a Jaguars matchup, nobody's going to get too far ahead. Hopefully, Darnold isn't throwing picks like Andy Dalton did last week, and Le'Veon Bell can have more value. He's my number 11. Moving on to number 12, Nick Chubb. Coming off a bye week, Mr. Nick Chubb, great running back. Unfortunately, plays against the Patriots. Now, that is tough. Now, we saw Le'Veon Bell do pretty decently on the ground. The question is whether or not they're going to come out and give that heavy run look to this defense. I mean, we've seen games in which Nick Chubb will come out, heavy run all over the defense. The Seahawks is one of those games where he was unstoppable. I want to see one of those games again. I want to see another one of those big performances from Nick Chubb against this Patriots defense because they haven't been tested like that, because they take so many leads, because they force so many turnovers. Baker is a turnover monster as of this season. But hopefully Nick Chubb can have a good game. He's a top 12 running back for sure. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about my RB2s on the week. Starting off with my number 13, it's a combination of David Johnson and Chase Edmonds. Now, if you had to put a gun to my head right now and say, Andrew, who's playing this week? Is David Johnson going to play? I'm going to, lean with the side that he doesn't. I'm going to say that David Johnson doesn't play this week. Why? Because they went ahead and they even signed Alfred Morris this afternoon, even after we talked about J.J. potentially being signed, Spencer Ware. No. Alfred Morris was signed. Alfred Morris is not a good running back. We saw it last year when he tried to take snaps away from Matt Breida. And he really tried to put out Matt Breida's fire. He couldn't even do that. So going forward, as of right now, I don't expect David Johnson to play. If in fact he is healthy, because they're saying it's an ankle injury now. I'm sorry, it's a back injury. You're not telling us the truth. It was a back injury, now it's an ankle injury, now next week it's going to be a toe injury. They're running us in a circle. So let's just stay safe. Let's play Edmonds. He had a monster week, but again, he has to play against the Saints. The Saints don't give anything up on the ground. Unless Edmonds is getting work through the air, it's going to be tough for Edmonds, and that's why I don't have him as an automatic play as my top 12 running back. So as of right now, we sit him at 13, and if David Johnson plays, still number 13. All right, moving on to number 14. Number 14, Aaron Jones, running back for the Green Bay Packers. Absolutely fantastic running back. Here's the whole thing about Aaron Jones. Sure, he has to split snaps with Jamal Williams, but the guy is an incredible running back. This offense is on fire. I mean, without Devontae Adams, when you are putting up that many touchdowns, that is a great sign. That only means when Davante Adams comes back, this offense is only going to get better. This coming week against the Kansas City Chiefs, without Mahomes, I think this is going to be a one-sided matchup. And I do believe eventually the running game is going to take over because they cannot stop the run. The Chiefs cannot stop the run. I believe Aaron Jones could potentially be higher in these rankings, but because of the fact that Jamal Williams does exist and he is going to see the ball very often, they're going to probably split 10, 11 snaps each on the ground in terms of rushing attempts, it's going to hurt Aaron Jones' value. That's why I don't have him crazy high, because I'm worried about Jamal Williams' presence. But again, rankings are always subject to change. By tomorrow, he can be my number 3 running back. But again, I just want to be cautious. He's a guy that I'm certainly starting. He's a must start in my opinion, either way. So he's my number 14 either way, ranking subject to change. Moving on. Let's talk about Austin Ekeler. So I kind of referred to this a little bit in the matchup section, talking about the Chargers offense and the plethora of injuries they have sustained thus far this season. Their offensive line really has lost a lot of pieces. Pouncey, the center, neck injury. Lamp, the guard, broken ankle, confirmed earlier today. Russell Okung has not been the left tackle this entire season because of the injury that he sustained. And to be honest, the protection, the run blocking, it has not been there all season long, and I don't think that's going to change, especially with the newest injury to their guard, Lamp. So going forward, what have we seen? Austin Ekeler is being used a lot because the Chargers are not winning games. They are often having to come back and try to win games in the fourth quarter, and that's only a recipe for success for Austin Ekeler. A guy like this who can line up out wide and run slants and hitch and goes and completely torch linebackers. He's an absolute Swiss Army knife for this offense, and I believe when this offense has Austin Ekeler in the backfield, they are a better team comparatively to Melvin Gordon as of right now. Going forward, especially into this week's matchup, I have a hard time sitting him. Yes, you have to play against the Bears, but the Bears have not been great against running backs, and I doubt they're going to be good against covering a guy like Austin Ekeler. This could be a closer game, but Eckler is going to be utilized more and more as the weeks go on. He's far too valuable in this offense to not be. So he's my number 15. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about Sony Michel at number 16. Sony Michel had a 3-touchdown game last night. There are some weeks that Sony Michel can't even sniff the 1 yard line, and all of a sudden now he's getting 3 touchdowns. That's just the volatility of this offense. I mean, we've seen it in years past where LeGarrette Blount will have 16 rushing touchdowns. We've seen guys stack up on touchdowns. That's what I thought Sony Michel would do this year. Prior to this past week, really we hadn't seen much of that. But if we can get to a trend in which Sony Michel is getting down to the 1 yard line and being fed the rock, that is absolutely fantastic. But when we were doing the live stream yesterday, we were watching it live, the Monday night game. James White had 3 touchdowns pretty much taken away from him. Some of it was his fault. Some of it was, unfortunate circumstance. One of them was he ran it in, holding call. They got, called back. Perfectly fine. Then he catches a ball on the sideline and is running. All he sees is green in front of him, trips over his own feet. He would have scored another touchdown. And then there was another one in which he runs all the way to the 1 yard line, dives out, short out the 1. There's 3 touchdowns that James White misses out on. But either way, Sony Michel was able to absorb the rest. I think this is a guy that is getting a good amount of touches. Sure, Rex Burkhead's gone. Brandon Bolden's getting work out of that backfield. But Sony Michel has too much inherent value because of how good this offense is and how much of a fact that these guys are getting ahead early and they're just killing clock late in games, and it's just going in the direction of Sony Michel, which is surely helpful for them. And this Brown matchup doesn't make a difference in my eyes, so he should be pretty good. Moving on to number 17, Ty Johnson. Like I mentioned, Kerryon Johnson's out. He's going to be on the IR, so where does that leave Ty Johnson? Well, he's the starting running back of the Lions team playing against the Giants. I think this is a really good matchup. I think this might be one of my favorite waiver wire pickups on the week because he has so much inherent value coming forward after this week as well. There's some pretty good matchups. Also, they're past their bye week, so you don't really have to worry about a guy like this. This is just a recipe for success in my eyes, and I like Ty Johnson this week as my number 17 running back. Haven't seen too much film on him. I'm going to be watching a little bit later this afternoon to kind of get a little bit of sense of what kind of running back he is. Obviously, they're going to use J.D. McKissic a little bit more and more as the weeks progress, but I still have some confidence in Ty Johnson this week. Moving on to number 18, Devontae Freeman playing against the Seahawks. Seahawks matchup isn't terrible, but Devontae Freeman, that offense hasn't been great. He's not running the ball enough. He gets his work in the passing game. He is an RB2. If he gets a touchdown, even better. He can maybe walk into that RB1 conversation. But unless that happens, he's going to consistently be an RB2 for this team. And that's where I have my number 18. I don't mind the matchup. I don't mind their offense. It should be a good game. And I hope Devontae Freeman finds some better value than he has in weeks past. Throwing a punch at Aaron Donald, definitely not the best way to go about doing that. But I doubt that happens this week. But people are going to get chippy against him, try to bait him into making stupid mistakes like that going into the future. All right, moving on to number 19. Number 19, Marlon Mack. So here's the thing about Marlon Mack and the Colts backfield. The issue that I find on a consistent basis is that when in fact this team gets into shootouts, meaning they have to score 35 plus points in a singular game in order to win, similar to how they did this past week against the Houston Texans, Marlon Mack pretty much disappears in this entire scheme. You don't see Marlon Mack carrying the ball 25 plus times because they don't need him to. He's never been a receiving back. There's a reason why they have Nyheim Hines in the lineup and often used as a third down back. I mean, the way that I see it going forward, Marlon Mack as of right now, unless we are in a great matchup, similar to how he played against the Chargers in early week 1 and recently against the Kansas City Chiefs before their bye week, unless he's getting a lot of touches, 20, 23 plus, I'm not really seeing a Marlon Mack in which he's getting me, 10, 15 points. He's often sitting around that 8, 9 range, which is a little worrisome in my eyes, especially considering he's supposed to be an RB2. As of right now, in the matchup this week against Denver, hopefully he can figure it out. That's why I have him at number 19. Moving on to number 20, Tevin Coleman. Okay, so here's the thing. The Carolina Panthers defense hasn't been bad. They've struggled thus far this season against the run, which is, definitely can be concerning. But I do think Tevin Coleman's touches, his usage is going to continue to go up. He's going to continue to see a lot of work, and therefore he's going to have inherent value because of how good this team is at running the ball. They are a run-heavy team. They want to use that power role, pulling guards, pulling the fullback, using tight ends in the blocking schemes. As of right now, Tevin Coleman has a lot of value in this matchup. Don't mind it whatsoever. As long as the 49ers can stay ahead and they don't have to force passing the ball, even though it does help Coleman, I think when this team is at its best, especially in effectiveness when they are ahead and they are heavily running the ball against you. And hopefully that will stay on par this week against the Panthers for Tevin Coleman. Moving on to number 21, Phillip Lindsay. Phillip Lindsay had a very disappointing week 7. I mean, when you play against the Kansas City Chiefs, you are anticipating a heavy run mentality in a game in which you're just running all over them. Unfortunately, we saw nothing of the sort. We even saw Phillip Lindsay give up a touchdown to Royce Freeman. For the love of God, Royce Freeman hadn't even scored a touchdown. Royce Freeman wasn't the goal line back of this team for all the weeks. And all of a sudden, Phillip Lindsay's value gone, diminishes with one foul sweep, and it's unfortunate. This offense is struggling. These guys are, RB2s, but going back and forth, Phillip Lindsay has the higher upside. Therefore, he'll sit at 21. Just not happy about it. I think it's an okay matchup this coming week, but it could be better, and it's going to be tough. I don't know. As of right now, in terms of whether or not the Broncos can go ahead and beat the Colts and run the ball heavily on them and find a successful way of doing so, I don't want to count Lindsay out because once I do, those are the weeks that he has big games. Whenever I count him out, he has monster games. All right, moving on to number 22, we have Matt Breida. Similar conversation with Tevin Coleman. When this 49ers offense is ahead, Matt Breida will go ahead. He will have his big runs. He will take advantage of the defense, and this offense is going to be able to succeed. Until then, we're gonna have to wait and see what kind of offense we've built here. You're bringing in Emmanuel Sanders. You're gonna help open it up a little bit so that defenses don't stack the box as much. But then again, Matt Breida still is the number 2 running back on this team. Still an RB2 in my mind with higher upside because of the matchup and because of how good this offense is. But still, hopefully we can see a little bit better outputs in the next coming weeks. All right, moving on to number 23, LaShawn McCoy. All right, so the only hope for this offense in terms of the running game, because Darrell Williams, Damian Williams completely disappeared. LaShawn McCoy leading the backfield in terms of rushing attempts in the last couple weeks. I know Damian Williams had like 9 rushing attempts for 7 yards. That doesn't excite anybody, and that does not help his case. Therefore, LaShawn McCoy going forward against the Green Bay Packers, It's going to be tough, but I do think he's in RB2. I think this is a guy that needs to be started because of the fact that outside of him, there really isn't anything else. If you are a LeSean McCoy owner and you can find a closer, if you can play James White over him, I don't mind it. But at this point, I can't see anybody else touching the ball out of the backfield except for him, especially in the passing game. They tried to set up some screens for him. Nothing was really clicking last week because of how good that defense was at times. But other than that, the Packers are going to make them struggle. And I think hopefully LeSean McCoy in the running game is going to be that one shining light of success for this team. All right, moving on to 24. Speaking of James White, I talked about him a little bit earlier with Sony Michel, talking about his ability to just make plays and continue to be a 10-point per week kind of guy. And as long as we continue to see that, I have a hard time leaving him on my bench. Sure, he is more of a RB3 flex play, but I still think he's got incredible value. And going forward against this Browns matchup should be great for him. All right, moving on. Let's talk about my RB3s really quickly before we finish today's video. Number 25, Royce Freeman. Against Indianapolis, should be a good matchup, should be completely fine, should be able to run all over them. The thing is, they split carries, him and Phillip Lindsay, they split carries pretty evenly as well, similar to Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, but the touchdowns are pretty much 50-50 as of late on whether or not, we're going to see Royce Freeman or Lindsay score. So we'll see where, between the two of them, who ends up scoring there. Carlos Hyde's my number 26, playing against the Raiders. Carlos Hyde didn't see much usage because they had to come back and pass the ball heavily. If in fact that ends up being the same way this coming week, that's going to be unfortunate because Carlos Hyde completely disappears, similar to Marlon Mack. He is the Marlon Mack of the Texans offense. And yes, he has less skill than Marlon Mack as of right now, and he's behind a worse offensive line. That's why he kind of sits at the 26th spot rather than a higher end 19-18 kind of play. All right, moving on to 27, Jamal Williams. Like I mentioned before, Jamal Williams is going to split snaps with Aaron Jones. They are playing against the Kansas City Chiefs. They will probably run all over them. There is a good chance that Jamal Williams can be a top 24 running back. I'm just going to be conservative with it as of right now, ranking subject to change. And I'm going to say 27 is a pretty good spot for him because if in fact the touchdowns go towards Aaron Jones, then you don't want to be, investing too heavily in a Jamal Williams, even though I do believe, a 10-point fantasy game is, a very good possibility this week. So as of right now, as a number 27 back, very confident in that. Hopefully, if he's available in your waiver wires, he's a guy that you can pick up certainly and play this week. Moving on to number 28, we have David Montgomery. You get to play against the Chargers. It's an extremely easy matchup. Now, unfortunately, you fumbled last week. As a rookie, that does not help you and your case, especially when your head coach, Matt Nagy, doesn't even want to run the ball. Now, unfortunately, that's the circumstance you're in. And as of right now, until something changes, until we see you have a big performance here, we're not going to see anything change very much. Hopefully, the Chargers defense, as porous as they have been, can be that turning stone. I know the offensive line for the Bears took a couple hits. Kyle Long on the IR. They've had to move Whitehair to the left guard spot, move in a new center, and try to figure everything out. Pretty tough there, but hopefully David Montgomery can get it done this week in an extremely easy matchup against the Chargers. Moving on to 29, Jordan Howard, still leading the backfield for the Eagles, even though Miles Sanders is still running around trying to take carries. Last week, didn't see as many rushing attempts because of just the game script. It was not in their favor. They were down far too many points, and it was never going to go in their direction. Therefore, they had to lean towards Miles Sanders being a pass blocking back and a receiving back. Going forward, I think in this matchup this week, should have a far easier time. It shouldn't be a one-sided affair in which these guys are getting completely blown out and where they have to worry about, they have to worry about having to come back in a game by only passing. It is the Bills' defense. The Bills almost lost to the Miami Dolphins, for God's sake. And the Bills, again, have not been a great offense, so this is going to be a closer game, and I think Jordan Howard's going to be used pretty heavily here. He's my number 29. Moving on to 30. Speaking of that matchup, we have the other side. We have Frank Gore. Even though I do believe Frank Gore, he's going to get like 10 touches. He's going to somehow find some value. He doesn't go away. He does not go away. That's all I have to say. Frank Gore does not disappear. Now, I hope that Frank Gore isn't this good. I hope Devin Singletary is better. But going forward, he's going to get touches, that inherent value. He could end up falling into the end zone and making a play here because that's what he's capable of doing. Obviously, this game is going to be very dictated by, in my opinion, it's going to be dictated by John Brown in the passing game. But, Frank Gore is always capable of scoring. Speaking of the other part of this matchup, we have Miles Sanders get some work in the passing game. Hopefully can go ahead and key in on that going forward into this matchup. Shouldn't be terrible. He has had some pretty good value. Unfortunately, touchdowns have made a big difference, and so has big yardage plays in the passing game. Doesn't see enough work in the passing game to be a streamline similar to James White, but hopefully as the coming weeks go on, he can go ahead and step into the next echelon of the running back tier. Moving on to number 32, Joe Mixon. I don't really want to play Joe Mixon, therefore I sit him here. I'm not really confident in him. The Rams matchup's not fun, and he hasn't looked good. Plain and simple. This team does not play well. They don't use him in the passing game. They don't use him on the ground, and therefore you will sit as an RB3 with no upside. 32. Moving on to 33. You want to fumble on the 1 yard line and really screw over fantasy owners? Go for it. I don't want to touch you anymore, Melvin Gordon. It's extremely unfortunate that this is the case. You have an extremely easy matchup against the Bears, who have given up so many points to opposing running backs. Maybe this is the week. Maybe you somehow pull it out of your ass. But as of right now, I have very little confidence in Melvin Gordon. I have all the world's confidence in Austin Eckler, because at least he is getting consistent work and being able to produce on opportunity. Gordon has not done the same. Therefore, I'm a little bit worried on him. Moving on to 34, Adrian Peterson. Guy's been great. Even in this tough matchup last week, a lot of it had to do with weather conditions and him being able to find some success there. But Darius Geis rumbling coming back. He's got to put up, be able to put up something here. Adrian Peterson doesn't get completely knocked out in terms of, a couple weeks ago they played against the Patriots. He was worthless there, but I think they're going to continue to feed him the ball. With the coaching change, it'll make a difference, and I think he'll be just fine. He'll be fine. Obviously, if I want to play him less than Melvin Gordon and Joe Mixon, then that kind of gives you an indication on where he sits in my eyes. But again, he's a running back that I got to mention. Number 35, Tariq Cohen. When you catch the ball 9 times for only 19 yards, yes, that might look really bad, but if you're in a full PPR, that's absolutely fantastic, and that's what I want to see. This coming week against the Chargers, could go back and forth. Could a lot of it be, Tariq Cohen getting a lot of work in the passing game? Certainly could. Mitchell Trubisky has not been great. That's probably an understatement. But the Midwest Bortles, that's what I've seen on Twitter a lot. The Midwest Bortles. That guy, he's going to have to figure it out. As of right now, not really convinced about everything there. Tariq Cohen has value, but as long as it's kind of a shootout. But then again, in a PPR, could be a decent play. And the last 2 guys I wanted to mention, Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones. I don't know between the 2 who's going to play well. I can never predict it. I truly can't. I'll be honest. I'll never be able to predict it. Maybe it's Derek Gumbawale that ends up, having a good week here. But pick your poison. That's all I have to say between the 2. Have to mention that because one of them is going to be on this top 36 list by week's end. But I don't know who it's going to be. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. I appreciate you spending your time with me today talking about running backs for week 8 of the 2019 fantasy football season. Again, if you haven't yet already, click the like button on today's video, click the subscribe button, click the bell notification button to stay up to date on my latest content. Thank you again, everybody. If you haven't yet already, click my Patreon link down below. I appreciate you just checking it out. You don't have to commit to anything. Just go ahead and check that out. That's all I ask. Thank you again, everybody, for taking your time out of your day, and I appreciate that. I will talk to you guys tomorrow for Wide Receiver Wednesday, talking about my top 36 rankings, all of that jazz. So hopefully put in your waivers, get everything done, and until tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Peace.